Hi there, this is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, and welcome to part 7 of my Dardennes Brothers series. Today we're going to talk about the 2014 film 2 Days, 1 Night, or Deux Jours, Une Nuit in French, starring Marion Coutillard in what I think is probably her greatest performance. She's certainly not glammed up as we're used to seeing her in Hollywood films. She's been normalised by the Dardennes. This is the Dardennes film that I saw about 18 months ago and did a random review on because I was so impressed, and then kind of that led me to go back and do this season, even though I had seen Le Fil, The Sun, years ago, but 2 Days, 1 Night was the film that so impressed me, which of course now looking at it again, it's full of the Dardennes motifs. So it stars Marion Coutillard, and also it has some Dardennes regulars, Olivier Gourmet, without glasses, controversially. Fabrizio Rongione plays Manu, Marion Cotillard's husband. She plays Sandra. And again, it's another deceptively simple plot by the Dardennes. It's about a woman who's coming back to her work at a solar panel company after being off sick from depression, and the boss has decided that yes, she can come back, but the other workers don't get a bonus, or she loses her job and the workers get €1,000 bonus. So the film follows her essentially over 2 days and 1 night, a weekend, to try and convince people to vote for her to stay, but they'll lose their €1,000 bonus. So there is a vote that happens on the Friday, and she lost. But Jean-Marc, the foreman, who's played by Olivier Gourmet, who we hear about during the whole film, very much like Harry Lime in The Third Man. We hear about him all the time, but then when he does actually make an appearance, he really gives a good performance in the brief scene that he's actually in. But so the foreman has been cajoling people and threatening people, and he phones people over the weekend not to change their vote so she doesn't get her job back. And he says, well, if she doesn't get the sack, one of you will, even though that's not actually what the boss is suggesting. It's a wonderfully simple plot that, in the hands of lesser directors or a lesser director, would become really dull and repetitive. It's a perfect example of the Dardennes, whose films are generally fairly simple plot-wise, because a lot of films have like complicated plots and overly complicated plots, but a complex plot doesn't actually make a complex film. A lot of the greatest films of all time have fairly simple plots. It's all the character stuff and the deeper kind of meaning of the film that actually resonates more than having an overly ornate plot. So again, this could be repetitive as she searches for and talks to these people and tries to convince them. But the film is a roller coaster, because as she comes to them, she's in a different mood. She can be despondent and down, and is then surprised by their answer if they give her their support, or she can be high from getting support and then pulled back down into despair when somebody says, I can't support you. Again, there's no great villain in this film. You could argue Jean-Marc is obviously bullying people and cajoling people to change their vote, but again, he's just doing that from a business perspective of trying to help the company. Even the boss isn't this Machiavellian, character who's evil. Again, he's doing it, as he says, to try and so they can stand up to the competition from Asian solar panel companies. So they're losing business. So if you look at the Dardennes films on the whole, there are no great villains. It's just people making decisions to try and survive. Because again, in general, the Dardennes message is set in this post-industrial Belgium world. They always shoot in pretty much the same town. And it is those moral choices that people are forced to make in this post-industrial world, and the moral choices that those people make. This is the plain archive edition. Again, this film is on Criterion. There's actually a few Dardennes that are actually on Criterion Blu-ray. This edition does have an interview with the Dardennes, but unfortunately it's in French with Korean subtitles, and my French isn't good enough to actually keep up with people who are talking quickly. There is an interview with Coutillard in English, which is very interesting, because she never thought she would actually work with the Dardennes, because they had a kind of specific kind of actor that they would work with. She talks about how they wanted her to get rid of her Parisian accent, and she talks about the 1 month rehearsal period just in the sets and in the locations and where the camera would be rather than the actual acting, which is a fascinating interview. She also tells a kind of funny anecdote about how on other films that she's made, the director or people in general never talk about the audience. They're enraged to think they're making decisions like for the audience. And she said she overheard the Dardennes talking about the audience, and they're like, oh yeah, we talk about the audience a lot, because they want to take the audience on a journey and surprise the audience as they go. So they're very cognizant of how are the audience going to feel about this and that. And obviously this film, like I said, is a roller coaster. It's arguably their most emotional film, certainly for me. It is profoundly moving because it is something that we can pretty much all identify with, unless you are ridiculously well off. And then obviously, like I said in my random review, which you can go and check out if you can find it in the channel, it's there somewhere. There will be some people that will watch this and just go, it's only €1,000. I mean, what are they getting worked up about? But again, these people are essentially working poor, which again is this post-industrial world. When she goes to talk to some of them, they're working off the books to make ends meet. One I think is restoring tiles to make ends meet. Another character's like spray painting cars. So you do get the sense that €1,000, that's why, if they'd made it like €10,000, it just wouldn't be realistic. But the €1,000 still makes it large enough to make a difference. One of the characters says, well, for our daughter's schooling, that's €500 a year. So essentially that would be 2 years they wouldn't have to worry about. Another character says €1,000 is a year's worth of gas and electricity bills. So again, everybody has their reasons. So the people that don't lend their support aren't painted as villains or anything, because again, it's easy to put yourself in their shoes. It's interesting as a fascinating piece of human behaviour, the first question that everybody asks is, what are the other people doing? Which again is the herd mentality that human beings have. It's kind of, well, if everybody else is doing it, I'll do it. But it's like, it's funny, all the people she speaks to, the first question they ask is, what are the other people doing? And obviously Coutillard, who, like I said, gives her best performance of her career, I think. A lot of the films, you kind of feel she's not breaking out a second gear a lot of the time. In this, like I said, there's plenty of highs and lows. There's one amazing scene where she's almost going to take some extreme measures. That's just beautifully played. Some of the people's kind of reactions to seeing her are profoundly moving. For example, Timur, the character called Timur, his reaction is just wonderful. And Anne, the character, her journey towards her answer of giving Sander support or not is quite wonderful. Again, the Dardennes writing is so good that they do take the time to paint all these characters as like three-dimensional people. They're just not caricatures. There's still other things going on in their life. It's 95 minutes and it absolutely flies by because, again, you're just hooked in immediately because they just drop you in. They're back to no score music whatsoever after flirting with music a couple of times in their last two films, briefly. So there's no score music. So it's back to good old-fashioned Dardennes. There's some source music, but no score music. It's just a wonderful film. So essentially she needs 16 votes. Sorry, there's 16 votes, so she needs 9 people to vote for her to keep her job, but lose their bonus. It's just an absolutely wonderful film. I'm going to go into spoilers. I didn't go into spoilers when I did my random review, but I will go into spoilers for the last 10 minutes of the film here. So if you haven't seen it, you can switch off the review at this point, but I would urge you to go watch it. For me, it might be my favourite Dardennes film, but again, I think similar to John Sayles, for example, I think your favourite Dardennes might just be the one you've watched last, because their standard is just so high. I think this was an official selection at Cannes, but personally, I think this should be a Palme d'Or, but they're probably too tired of giving the Dardennes a Palme d'Or all the time, so they probably didn't give it for 2 days, 1 night. But it's a stunning film. I think it's a film that will, survive the test of time because it is about something that we can all relate to. This idea of selfishness versus selflessness. How much would you sacrifice for someone else keeping their job, even though you have your own problems, you have your own bills to pay. Again, simple premise, but it's just done so well. And again, it's just a testament to the Dardennes skill that it's not repetitive and boring and dull as she just goes from here to there trying to convince people to vote for her. So I'm going to go into spoilers in the last 10 minutes now, so if you haven't seen the film, go watch it. It's pretty readily available, and you can let me know in the comments what you think about it after you've seen it. So I'm going to go into spoilers in the last 10 minutes. Like I said, I didn't do it in my random review, but I feel it's kind of important because the ending is absolutely wonderful, and then the Dardennes add a lovely big fat moral cherry on the top of it. So this is not a Hollywood film, this is a Dardennes film. So she does not get enough votes. Again, if this was Hollywood, um, she would go on this journey and she would convince everybody to drop their bonus. She would win the vote 16-0 or something. So the vote goes 8-8. So she did a pretty good job, but she has lost her job and the workers keep their bonus, which would be a fantastic way to end it. But they put in a conversation with the boss. So the boss wants to see her, Dumont. And he says, he's impressed by the fact that she managed to convince 8 people to give up their bonus, essentially. So he says he's willing to take her back on and give her colleagues the work bonus, but he'll let the temporary worker go in September. So she'll lose her job until September. I'm guessing this is kind of set in the summer because it's actually sunny, which isn't always the case in Dardennes films. So he'll give her job back in September, but one of the temporary members of staff, their contract won't be renewed. And again, so she's given the moral choice. You can have your job back, your colleagues can have their bonus, but one of them will lose their job. And she's just like, I can't take my job back, so somebody else loses theirs. It's just wonderful that they just decided to add another moral choice, give her a moral choice that all the other characters have been dealing with. Some of them struggling with that choice more than others. But the majority of them have struggled with that. So, there's characters who say, I can't support you, but I'm not happy about it. It's a struggle. It's not just, oh yeah, screw her, I'm taking my money. So it's just wonderful that they add that moral choice back onto Sandra at the end of the film. And she just has the strength, despite what she's been through, just to say, you know what, I'm not going to take my job back and somebody else lose theirs. Because it's more likely to be Alphonse, because we know Alphonse, who she met in the laundrette, is a temporary worker until September, and he was fearful. He originally voted against her because he was fearful of Jean-Marc. He was fearful of not having his contract renewed. So we as an audience have that knowledge that it's probably going to be him that's going to lose his job. And he was so kind of nice to her in the laundrette and explaining why he made the decisions that he made. And it does end in a kind of hopeful note. So it's, some of the Dardennes films, they're grim kind of setups, because again, this is kind of working poor or people struggling. But this one does end with some hope as she leaves the job, telling Manu, her husband, Fabrizio Rongione, who is wonderful in a relatively thankless role, but he's there just to support her and prod her and push her. So she tells him, we put up a good fight, and she does seem kind of energized to move forward and maybe find another job. So it is a kind of upbeat to a point ending, which makes, the journey so worthwhile and so wonderful. Because another thing that I probably should have said before the spoilers is the fact that Dardennes do make it clear that Sandra does have issues and still has issues. So even though she puts on a brave front and how she's ready to go back to work and she's fighting fit, you can tell that she's still got some issues and she's still got lingering problems. They don't paint her as this kind of paragon of perfection that has just been wronged unfairly. And again, that speaks to the writing, the fact that, you know, nobody's a villain really in any of their films. Um, it's just people making decisions that sometimes have a negative effect on other people. Um, yeah, so I just love the fact that she comes close, but she doesn't actually win the vote. Again, like I said, other filmmakers in other countries would maybe have her winning the vote and getting her job back. Um, and the fact that they just add that little bit where her boss says, "Oh yeah, I'll do both," but somebody eventually has to lose their job, um, and she just says, "Enough's enough." You know, as far as you just can't put people through this constantly. Um, so it's an absolutely wonderful film. I think originally I rated it a 4 out of 5, but watching it again, um, knowing the history of all the other Dardennes films, and seeing Olivier Gourmet and Morgane Marianne, who played the um, not the son in the sun, um, and Fabrizio Ronchione, who the first time I saw it, I didn't really know who he was, but of course now he's our Dardennes favourite. I think that elevated it, and I think it is a 5-star film, and I think it's, as much as awards count for anything, I would have liked to seen this one win the Palme d'Or. Just stunning film, relevant. I think it'll always be relevant, and you can't say that about all films ever made. And for me, Marion Cotillard's best performance of her career by a long way. So thanks very much for watching. Sorry for rambling on a bit. And again, let me know if you've seen 2 Days, One Night and what you think of it, where you rank it in the Dardennes filmography. And hopefully you'll join me for part 8 of the Dardennes Brothers series. So this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.